Welcome to the Builder Hacks Podcast, your go-to destination for cutting-edge strategies, time-tested systems, and invaluable insights to revolutionize your construction business and elevate your life. Join your hosts, Nate Piper and Keith Meals, seasoned contractors who are not just in the trenches, but are also pioneering the future of the industry through Concord University. In each episode, we dive deep into the minds of the industry's most accomplished building professionals, uncovering their secrets to success and sharing actionable tips to help you thrive. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, our goal is to empower you to build a brighter future for yourself and for America. Tune in, level up, and let's build a better tomorrow together. This is the Builder Hacks Podcast. Build your future, building America. So Nate, this podcast this week, what we want to talk about is what trades are there in residential construction? So because I'm sure everybody's got, one or two of them in their head that whenever you say residential construction, they're like, oh, that's what that means. And you and I know that there's so many more. So Why don't you go ahead and run us through what are some of the trades that if someone was interested in residential construction, that could be an option for them?
Well, let's start off with the obvious ones, right? You've got roofer, you've got windows, you've got siding, or brick, or masonry,
stucco here in Florida.
Stucco. You've got framing, you've got insulation, you've got drywall, you've got electricity, you've got plumbing, you've got HVAC, you've got flooring, you've got countertops, you've got cabinets, you've got baseboards and trim, you have doors, you've got landscaping, you've got stairwell or stairs, you've got iron bars, iron welding, you've got concrete for driveways, you've got, the list just got irrigation, fencing. Like we just keep going.
The painters. You forgot about the painters.
Painters.
Caulk and paint, make it what it ain't.
That's it. There's probably a list of about 70 trades that could fit inside of a house.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just the main ones. And then you have specialty trades, right?
Yeah, you got like shower enclosures and
glass and showers and faucets and
so many
and exhaust fans and you name it. There's like
even appliance install. So as far as that,
we just keep going on and on and on about there's probably 70-ish trades or people that are doing work that are doing their function of work, and not all of them cross-train or understand each other, but everybody's got their little lane that they go. But you can go through about 70 different positions that are needed inside of a house.
So when you look at or when you think about all of those, and this is like one of those key questions then right now, what are some of the differences between them? Like what makes a good framer?
Well, you can't be afraid of heights. That's number one.
That is very
I had
true.
a great guy that loved to cut wood, was good at that, but didn't want to go up on a ladder. So
he's the all-time cut guy then is what he is.
He's the all-time. I stand by the trash dump and I just cut and throw lumber in the trash. I throw lumber up at the guys for doing that. You got to be able to, have pretty much a good math set, be able to read the plans.
When you say a good math set, Nate, what does that actually? Because I know people hear that and like, oh crap, I'm horrible at math. Like I even give the example of my daughter. So whenever you say math, she's like, oh God. So because she did it in school, but she did it in school because she had to do it in school. So it was really what it came down to. What does that really mean for someone who's going to be in the industry?
Yeah, it means adding, subtracting, multiplication, and a little bit of geometry. Mm-hmm. That's really what it is. You have to understand angles in order to make the cuts right. And you have to understand how to add, fractions, an eighth, a 3/4, 5/16. You have to be able to understand, the math component that goes along with how to make something precise and fit. And it's not overly complicated. You're not doing trigonometry. You're not doing any of these other high level math. You're really 4th, 5th grade math.
No calculus, Nate. I don't have to
no calculus. Right. You can get into that later on, but
if you want to be the engineer or the architect,
but you want to figure out what the weight load is, but that's not really going to be your job unless you want to go down that path. And that might be a path that you go down, but you have to learn
You
this
love that
path
kind of
before you
stuff.
get there.
Could be, yeah.
But and even then you got a calculator. So
in today's world, that's exactly, the computer will do a lot of it for you. Don't worry about it.
and that's part of it. But starting off to be a framer, you can't be afraid of heights. Probably a 5th grade math level that you've mastered, right? You don't want to just be, oh, I passed 5th grade, so I'm good at math. No, you need to understand those concepts of multiplying, dividing, fractions, a little bit of geometry, so you know what's a right angle and what's 45 degrees and 90 degrees, 180 degrees, so you can fit these pieces together. And you got to know how to use the air compressor and the nail gun. And you're a framer.
And a saw.
And a saw. Usually there's one cut guy.
Usually, yes. So he's the guy that doesn't like being up on the heights.
And he's the guy that mastered the math.
Yeah. Well, that's it. He's the guy that's mastered the angles, because whenever they go ahead and tell him they want a plumb cut, so yeah, he knows exactly what that means.
I always love it when I go on a job site and there's some old guy and he's not cutting wood on a sawhorse, but he's got it on his foot and he's lifting it up and he's just and he just cuts through it. I'm like, man, I feel sorry for his toes one day.
Yeah, because so if you're listening to this, that's not the ideal OSHA approved way to cut a piece of wood.
Not at all, but that's always the old school guy that's been doing it for 40 years and
you're not going to change him.
Yeah, he's being lazy. He doesn't want to take it over to the sawhorse. He's just like, I'm not making
I can do that right here while I'm on top of a top plate. So leaning against the truss that has no decking on top of
it. Yeah. and no tie off and no, no harness. Just
and whenever we look at so if I'm not good at math, Nate, whenever I come into this, is that going to be something that's going to hold me back, or is this something that through
you learn math
like that?
You learn math is a learnable skill. Okay. Everybody learns it. And everybody starts off and they all suck in the beginning. And I'm serious, they all suck. I mean, I could take somebody who went to college, did trigonometry, did the whole thing, and I say, hey, go take this piece of wood and cut it so it fits this wall. The very first thing that they do is they go in there, they measure the wall, then they come back to the saw, and then they cut the saw, or they cut the wood. And they go back to the wall and they realize it's either A, too long, or B, too short. And they can't figure it out. They're like, well, I measured it, but it doesn't fit. Well, they didn't take into consideration the saw blade.
Yep.
That's the first one, right? Most of the time they don't take it, or they don't know how to read the little numbers on the tape measure, right?
That's the challenge I see more often, is that they don't know what the graduations are on the tape measure. And that's an experience thing. If you haven't seen that, and I'll say it, in today's education world, I remember whenever I went to school, you had the 12-inch wooden ruler. So you actually had to learn to read to a certain, it was I think they were down to maybe the 16th if it was a really detailed one. Yeah. So now the tape measures that I have, and probably the ones you have, I've got a framing tape measure. So my towel guys always give me a hard time because they'll say, hey, can I borrow your tape for a second? And I hand them my 35-foot tape and they're like, this thing's freaking huge. I'm like, I measure more than 24 inches at a time, guys.
Yeah, that's it.
But they're really detailed on those. I think mine goes down, it's either the 32nd or 64th. So on the graduations, not that I typically use that, because you get I need 5/8 heavy. So and it is what you get.
Well, I mean, I think mine's a 16th, right? Or it might be a 32nd, but still, it's just understanding those little lines mean something, right? Mm-hmm. And making sure that the end of the tape measure goes all the way to the end of the wall and where you need it to be. Those are the things. So in framing, we always say measure twice and cut once, right? Because if you cut it too short, you can't grow wood back. So,
well, and actually in that case, anything that you're cutting, because tile is the same way. So we always, one of the first things we always tell the electrical apprentices to do is go out and get the wire stretcher because somebody cut their wire too short. So type of thing.
Hey, you need to go out to the van and go get me the wire stretcher so that we can pull that in.
What's it look like? You'll know it when you see it. I promise. There's nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing else in the van that looks like it. 35 minutes later, I can't find it. Where is it? I've looked it everywhere. And you hear all the guys laughing because you got the joke played.
Yeah, for all of you that have been in sports and had those what was used to be referred to as hazing, and you're not allowed to say it that way anymore. So that's just part of learning the industry, and everybody giving you a hard time because it goes ahead and forms a bond in the community that actually ends up happening with the people you're working with.
But you know, it's one of those things we all have to go down this path to earn our stripes, you know.
So, so what?
And
All right. So outside of that, then, all right. So we talked a little bit about framer.
right.
So what about, let's say I want to be a flooring person, whether it's a tile guy or a wood floor guy or whatever the case. What do I need to, what am I going to experience? What do I need to be good at to be able to be someone like that?
Um, Flooring, you got to be comfortable to get down on your knees and have knee pads, you know, because you're going to be moving and
Key number one, have knee pads.
have knee pads. I mean, I spent a few years doing, flooring and kind of laying all those pieces in. And really it's like you got to understand what the substrate is or what you're putting the flooring down on, right? And then you have to figure out if it's going to be tile, if it's going to be carpet, if it's going to be wood. What is the material that you're working with? Because each one of those materials is a little bit different, and you've got to be able to identify like, okay, I can lay carpet on this concrete, no problem. But if I lay a wood floor or a tile product on there, I need to make sure that it's level or it's got, sanded down. It's not buffed. And so there's a lot of these different things that you have to look at or know the material that you're using to install so that you can make sure that you're in alignment because flooring is one of those pieces where if you're off by, an eighth of an inch on one end, you'll be off by 2 inches at the end of the run. And so then your flooring will curve and it's going to look like crap. So, um,
And you can't always blame that on the framer, which is the first place that flooring guys go. Oh, the framing's off. So,
yeah, yeah, we blame the flamer for everything because they're the first guy in.
Well, actually, we blame the concrete guy for everything. Is what it comes down to down here.
He's the first guy. We blame the rough end plumber for not putting the stack pipe where it needed to be. The thing about construction is that it is a handful of systems being put together to make one uniform home, right? Or building. And it's all of these things working together is what makes it a successful build. And the problem that comes into is that to make all those things work successfully and everything to line up, people have to pay attention. And
So
they've got to
attention to
know
detail is going to be key for no
it's
matter what
key.
trade you're in.
It's key. And especially for someone starting out. My best advice that I would give someone starting out is like observe, pay attention, try to do what everybody else is doing exactly the same way. And you need to find someone that's going to be able to teach you the slow path to be able to be successful. If they're just wanting you to throw in and run and do and go and be, you're going to have a lot of hard times trying to figure out like what is the exact thing I need to be doing at the exact time that I need to do it.
And I think that's a great key because there's a lot of people, and this is something that you've just got to be aware of when you get in the industry and when you start asking whoever you're working with, you've got to be able to figure this out on your own. Some people are very good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are good at what they do and they're able to teach and train somebody else to be able to do it too. And it's no different than anywhere you might go and find a job. Somebody who's
Yeah.
explaining the job to you might be excellent and going ahead and training, while someone else is like, this is just what I do. It's just figured out. So that's
Yeah.
what it comes down to. And that when you get that person, it's going to be a challenge. And you're always, if you go to work for a bigger company and that's who's supposed to be training you, ask them if there's someone else that could train you, and let them know, hey, I'm looking to learn as much as I possibly can. I'm looking to learn the details, the whys, the thought processes behind things. That way I can make things work out. If it's a business owner for the company or a supervisor, they'll love to hear that from you, but because of the fact that that's the type of employee they're looking to have. So, and
Mm-hmm.
they're looking to train because then you're going to be valuable to them as opposed to the person that's in there and, hey, the guy didn't teach me anything. And it's like, I kind of half-assed my way through this is what it comes down to because I was the training that I got. And then the result reflects that training. And then the issue ends up becoming is that's the work you've got. And now they've got to go ahead and be responsible for that work. And it's ask lots of questions. I mean, that's
Well,
really what it comes down to in the beginning.
I would say ask a lot of questions after the first week.
It's you're
Week
right.
number one, don't say anything. Watch everything and ask little bitty questions here and there. And then after a week of being on the site, then ask questions. But people are or at least it's been my experience. The supervisors want you to pay attention to what others are doing and then start to mimic or start to feel like you're there. And these guys that are artists, and that's what they are, right? They're artists. Every last one of these trades is an artist. They are a professional artist that's doing work. And that's how I view them, is that each trade has something unique that is for them that they do that is amazing, and it comes together. But what they can't do is get out of their artistry to then try to teach somebody who's not paying attention to what they're doing, and then that throws off their artistry. So if you watch what they're doing, and then you'll ask better questions after watching them, and then they don't have a problem answering those questions. But if you're like, hey, what's this and what's that and what's this and how does this work, and you're pushing them, they get really frustrated because they can't do what they're doing because you're asking too many questions. So I would hold off for at least a week before you ask any questions and just watch, because
and I think the other part that goes well, I think that's a great point, Nate, is you've got to get a little bit of knowledge about whatever it is. The other part that I think goes with that is just do what they tell you to do,
yeah,
because at the same time, they want to see that, hey, I'm going to put the effort in, I'm going to bust my butt, I'm going to take care of whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do it exactly the way you told me to do it. So then do that consistently, because when they see that, then they're more encouraged to take that time with you and explain things too. It's like, all right, he listened to the basic stuff in the beginning for the first week and just did it. Oh, and did it well. So that's the thing. I mean, it's, I've always learned, and my mom always went ahead and put that out to me. Whatever you do, no matter what it is. So whether you're cleaning that toilet or whether you're going ahead and doing something very technical and very specific. So as you do it to the highest level of your ability, no matter what. So you don't half-ass anything through the process. Oh, and
yeah,
every job I mean, like even the laborers that are working for my guys on the job sites that are going around and cleaning stuff up at the end of the day, what's one of the most important things? Make sure you get every nail and screw off of somebody's driveway. And if you don't do that well, guess that can be a huge challenge. So with a homeowner who's pulling into the driveway that night, punctures their tire and comes out to a flat tire the next morning as you guys are rolling up, because you're getting the finger pointed at you. So whether
yeah,
it's our fault or not, they may have picked it up someplace else, but we are the likely culprit in their mind. And
yeah,
it's the little things. And that's the part that people miss. It's like, I want to get off into the big stuff. I want to be doing all, do all the little things well, and you'll do the big things well as they come to you.
absolutely.
Well, and that is so if you're looking across the board, Nate, so and someone's coming into the industry, should they go ahead like attempt to hop into, being a mason, then going and learning framing, then going ahead and learning how to be the trim carpenter, and then learning, or should they stick with one and ride that out for a certain amount of time?
That's a great question. Um, I've seen guys do it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest component there is kind of figuring out what thing that they like doing the best. And when you get into it, you don't know what you're going to like.
Right.
And you need to be able to try some different things, but you have to be good enough at what you're doing. Well, let me take this back. If you have an opportunity to get into the trades anywhere, take advantage, right? Dive into it. I don't
Right.
care if it's sweeping floors. I don't care what it is. I take advantage of it. Go get into it. Go be a part of it. And in that transition, you'll start to pick up different things that will entice you, right? Or make you think about, like, well, how does that work? And how does this? And you start going down this path. So anywhere that you can get into the trades, get into them. Then once you've gotten into it, then you got to get to a point where you've got enough skills that you're halfway not too sucky, right? That's probably the best way to say it, right? You've got a few months underneath your belt. You've showed up to work. You understand how to use this one tool. Maybe it's a hammer. Maybe it's a saw. Maybe it's a screwdriver. Maybe it's a drill. Whatever it is, you've got halfway decent. You understand what that tool is. You understand what it does. Then experience some of the other things. Like, go and look at it and observe it. When you're on a job site, you're exposed to 4 or 5, 6 different trades all at the same
Yeah.
time. Even if the guys aren't there, you get to see it And you might be doing some physical labor, carrying something in and out of a project, but you get to see what other guys are carrying in and out of a project, and how do they structure their van or their work vehicle, or how do they show up, and what kind of clothes do they wear, and what and all of these things start to play into what you want your next venture to be. And I would encourage that wholeheartedly for people to kind of get in, test the waters, but you can't test the waters until you've actually stuck your toe into the water. So do that first and then transition through. But one of the easiest things that people will say that they want to get into is painting, right? They want to go and I want to be a painter. Well, I wouldn't recommend starting off as a painter. I would probably recommend starting off at something else. I'd probably say,
why do you say that, Nate?
Painting is a lot harder than what people think it is. Painting is not a let me slap some of this color on a wall or I mean it is attention to detail. It is a specialty art. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Everybody thinks that they can do DIY, go down to Home Depot, Lowe's and get a gallon of paint and go paint their bedroom. The reality of it is when you're doing it as a profession, you spend the first 90% of your time doing prep work, and then you do 10% of the time doing painting. And it is the hardest thing to figure out and to learn that little blue tape line that they're putting down has to be 100% perfect in that corner, or you're going to bleed over onto the other wall. And
not just perfect, it's got to be perfect and perfectly adhered so that it doesn't rot underneath the tape.
Right. And painters are very particular and you're not going to get a lot of you're not going to get a lot of leadway or any grace with a master painter. He is going to be very short, very sharp. He's going to stab you where you wish you hadn't, and so there is no forgiveness there, because that is a finish, right?
And that brings up a good point whenever you look at it, Nate, because you've got the finished trades, which painting is one, and that's what you're talking about. And then you've got your rough in or your starting trades. What's the difference between the two for people that are listening?
So the rough ends are all the stuff that just has to work, right? You have to have framing or you can't have a structure. You have to have insulation or, it's not there. You have to have drywall, right? Like these are like the rough end stuff. The finishing pieces are the final touches, right? It's the light fixtures. It's the painting. It's the flooring. It's the final thing that people are seeing has to be that perfect finished product.
So it's kind of like basically, so rough end stuff is the stuff that the homeowner, when they get into the home, isn't really going to see, whereas your finished stuff is everything that they actually look at for construction because it's what they see, it's what they touch,
see,
it's what they're in every day.
And they evaluate the quality of the build on the finishes, not on the rough end, on the finishes. You could have a perfect rough end and the finishes are okay. They're going to think the entire house is built like crap.
Yep.
And what you really want is that you want the rough end stuff to be perfect. And it usually is. And then the finishes to be perfect. And then they have a good feeling about their home or their building that they have. And that's another big point where there's a difference between commercial and residential. Because I get into this all the time where we do commercial, we do residential. My commercial guys, they just run and gun and it's over, right? It's like if we're in, we're out, we're over. And they don't pay attention to like the small little details, but they don't care. And their tenants don't care because most of the time it's going to a business, it's going to be used and abused, and nobody has an emotional attachment to it. In residential, there's an emotional attachment to their home. That's their home. That's their pride. That's their investment, right? They worked hard to be able to buy something that they can now live in that's theirs, right? So there's an emotional attachment there. Yeah. And so there is two different things between commercial and residential. And the residential side, the finish trades are absolutely crucial. I actually pay my finish trades better than most guys pay their finish trades because I want them to understand, like, I respect you as a finisher because you finish out the project the way that it's supposed to, and you give the right appearance and the right feeling and the right perception. So getting back to the very beginning, don't start off in painting.
So if you looked at the trades that are in the residential construction industry and you were going to start somewhere, what trade would you recommend to start with? And after you give yours, I'm going to go ahead and give you what my viewpoint on that one is. So, but what trade would you say, hey, if I'm new into construction, I want to get an idea of how this all works, which trade would you start with?
I'm probably going to shock you with this one. I would start off with insulation.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, because I'm right in the middle. I get to see what a frame structure looks like and all the things that go inside the wall cavities. I
Right.
can't hardly mess it up because all I'm doing is putting insulation in a wall or in the ceiling. I'm blowing it
You
in,
would
right?
think that they couldn't hardly mess that up.
Unless you miss a wall cavity, and then that's crucial. But you're not having to introduce all your math skills. You're not having to lift, heavy pieces of anything. And you get exposed to it at a different level where you get to see the beginning phases before you go into finishes, which helps you understand the finishes of how everything comes together, because then you understand my framing structures are either 16 or 24 inches off center. I have plumbing lines that go in a standard pattern. My electrical lines are in the standard pattern. All these are part of a code, right? Where you get to learn about the code book, the International Building Code. And it gives you so much exposure on the front end with minimal pieces that are going to be detrimental to your career. And it also gives you an opportunity to say, like, I wouldn't mind trying out framing, or I wouldn't mind trying out plumbing, or I wouldn't mind trying out electrical, or I wouldn't mind putting drywall up. Finally, I put everything else in there. I just want to put drywall on the wall. It gives you exposure to different things at an early point, and so that'd probably be where I'd recommend
Hey,
people start.
you're right. You definitely surprised me with that one. I was not expecting that. And I like that answer though, too, because like even for us down here, and I don't know whether it's as much for you, it all depends on the type of insulation that you do. But
Yeah.
like we always have front end some way, whether we're batting the walls, so we're putting 5 foil over top of the block walls or whatever the case may be. So you've got it there. And then our insulators are back at the end also to go ahead and
Mhm.
blow insulation for the when you have blown. A lot
On
of
top.
times people will go ahead and bat their ceilings and stuff like
Yep.
that, and then they don't have to worry about the blown. That all depends on your construction type and what you choose to do. But that in that case, if you're doing that, then you would actually get to see both. Although typically my insulation guys, you've got a batting crew and you've got a blow crew, so they're two
Yeah.
different crews. But that in that case, though, you would be able, if you worked at the insulation company, get a
Yeah.
chance to experience both of those and see both sides of that. So I do. It's an interesting piece because like my thought process on that was framing was the one, and I'm very partial to that because that's where I started to, as far as that part goes. Yet at the same time, a lot of the same things you were talking about, it's the same way because you get to see how the structure comes together for us. Masons are always the ones that start everything for us, with
Yep.
footers and a lot of times block walls. And then
Right.
you start working from there for the framer, and they literally go ahead and frame everything up. They're the ones that actually set what the structure is going to look like on the inside and a lot of times on the outside, depending on what you've got going on. And at the same time, they're going to be back at some point to punch out the house right before insulation, actually.
Yeah.
And then that's when you get the chance to go ahead and see those types of things. And you get to learn as a framer through that process, because if you don't go ahead and put the AC platform at the right height, so inside the AC closet, guess what? You're going to have to come back and do that. So if
Yeah.
you don't go ahead and put the blocking in for the cabinets, so that whenever the cabinet guys are coming in, and then you understand, hey, they need cabinet blocking here because at 54 inches, that's the bottom of my upper cabinet. So 96 if I'm running 42-inch cabinets. So, or 84s if I'm running 30-inch cabinets, whatever the
Yeah.
case might be. You get to
Yeah.
learn how a lot of the other trades start to come together. You've got to run furring strips down around the bottom so that the trim guys have something to nail the base off to whenever they're going ahead and doing
Yeah.
it with block walls. I mean, there's so many different pieces that you can learn. You see what the window guys, how they install the windows, which means, and you got to get the
Yeah.
doors right for the
Yeah.
trim guys to put the doors in. So it's like you get that overall Same thing. You get to see how they get everything installed on the rough inside. Oh, and it's to me, it's a great thing. And like I will say this, like my framers do my hardy board siding, so and they'll also do my T&G tongue and groove ceilings. So whenever
Mhm.
we do that, so those guys get to see even on the finish side of things how things come together too. So depending
Yeah.
on what we're doing as far as those pieces go. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. Getting in somewhere where you get to see a little bit of both sides, so, or at least that opportune time where you get to see everybody who's already roughed everything in and you get to see how they did their stuff, gives you that good thing. Now, like for me I also look at the structural side of things. And I think
Mhm.
that the framers, you actually get to learn how it all goes together to be effective
Yeah.
on that side of things. And you get more of that detail behind it. So that's the reason why I would say framer, but I think either of those, I think is a good thing. But the framer, there's a lot more things you can mess up. There's no question about it. So you're right. The insulation on that end, a lot less challenges you've got to worry about jacking up in the house that someone's going to be catching your butt about.
Well, and when you start thinking about it, there is no bad place to start, right?
Nah.
It's just where do you fit in? Like just get moving along with it and kind of pull it all together. But there is no bad place to start. Even if you get a job as a painter
Mm-hmm.
and as an assistant painter, just walk slowly and speak less, because painters are, they're required to go fast. They have to be perfect, and there's a skill there in the prep work. Um, and it fits some people really well. So even though I said don't start off painter, but if that's your passion, go forward. Anybody can handle it, and
If you
anybody can do it.
if you're detail oriented, so and that's like one of your strong suits, you already know that about yourself. A lot of the finish trades, that's exactly what you need is someone that's highly
Mhm.
detail oriented because like Nate said earlier, that's what every homeowner sees. That's the part of the house that they look at every day.
Yeah.
So if that's something that you love, getting into one of those trades and learning that, so can do really well for you. So because it's going to be right up your alley. You're going to
Yeah.
like it because it is a detail oriented piece. You're going to be working with somebody, provided they're a good craftsman, well, who is very detail oriented also, which means the two of you speak the same language or communicate more effectively. So on that
One
side
of
of
one
things
of
too.
the things that I do when I'm doing inspections is before we're ready to release it out to the homeowner, I go into the master bathroom, I go into the toilet room, and I put the toilet seat down, I put the lid down, and I sit there for like 3 minutes, right? And I look around everywhere around that area, and there's always something behind the door or on the baseboard or whatever. And those are the things that I'm marking like you guys are going to fix
Yeah.
all of this stuff because I've learned that is where the master of the house is going to sit, and that is going to be what their view is, and they are going to nitpick everything that they see from that location. So
Yep.
you
It's
go
a
to
good.
sit on their throne, and
Mm-hmm.
then you identify all the things that are wrong in that area and fix them.
Yep. And it's funny because that's a great point as far as that part goes, because it's where most people will spend a good portion of the time where there's nothing else to focus on except what's right around them.
Yeah,
And then the other piece that goes with it is I always look at the foyer. So whenever
yeah,
you're coming in the house, because whenever every homeowner comes in the house, if they come in the house and then they stand in the foyer and they're just start picking out things that need to be taken care of, we always refer that's going to turn into the walk from hell. So is
yeah,
what we say because of the
yep,
fact that their same impression. They didn't do a good job with this. I need to be on heightened alert. I need to pick out everything to get it all taken care of. That's what I always tell all of my guys. I'm like, if we walk out of the foyer and we've got less than 3 items, it's going to be an easy walk. If
yeah.
we go more than 3 items, get ready, kids. So it's going to look like someone came in with a blue tape gun and spread it all over the place. So
The blue sea.
yeah,
For you guys that don't understand what we're talking about, I mean, whenever you're doing like a finished product walk, especially on a new home, they always do a buyer walk, and in doing that buyer walk, they give the future new homeowner a roll of blue tape, and they say, okay, if you
you
see
guys are
any
brave.
blemishes, yeah,
You guys are brave.
yeah, we say if you see any blemishes, here's your blue tape, mark it. This is your one time to pick out your spots and get them correct. You know, and you'd be amazed by how many people come through and just see a wall and just I don't like the texture and just do it a million times over.
Yeah.
So well, we're not even gonna get into that part of this in this episode today because That's a whole other conversation future down the road. But what we are talking about is there are opportunities. There's a million opportunities. There is more opportunities than you can even think there are opportunities. And the construction industry needs people to come in that are willing to put in the time and effort and energy to help move along our society and also to involve their new career. So come on board and join in on the Leading America's train to re-influence America with our new construction trades.
And that's a great piece. And realize this is the one, I will say this is one industry where whatever trade you walk into, if you decide that that isn't the trade for you, the one big key point would be because of the fact that you've already worked in the industry, other trades will hire you because you've already got a base and a foundation. They'll hire you
That's
like
it.
that.
That's
So
it.
it's a great place to be able to walk in and have a wide variety of opportunities open and just start. I've got my towel guy right now was a trim guy at one point. So was used to install different floorings. So he used to be a painter. So he used to, I mean, there's so many different things that he used to be a framer. So he's done so many different things throughout his life. Well, as he's gone through this. Oh, and he's at flooring now, and he keeps telling me he's tired of flooring. We'll see whether he changes out of flooring or not. I think he's getting a little older, and I think it's just that's where he's going to be. That was what
Yeah.
it comes down to. And at the same point, you do have a lot of opportunity, and that is the one thing, like Nate was talking about. We want you to realize when you step into construction, now whether it's residential or commercial, obviously Nate and I are bigger on the residential side, or at least I know I'm huge on the residential side because that's what I do.
I love residential. I love it
Yeah.
because I like knowing that I'm helping somebody with their investment of their home. And when you do it right, they love you for it, and I love doing it.
So this is your opportunity. If you're interested in this, so start reaching out to trades, reach out to Nate or I. We'll give you some guidance. So you never know. We may do a quick chat with you to find out what your interests are and things like that, and then give you a little guidance on which route you should go. So whether it's coming to something like Concord University with us, so whether it's going to work with somebody in your local area and or a combination of the two, which would get you the biggest bang for your buck, that's something we'd definitely be able to help you out with for sure. So stay tuned. So make sure to tune in on the next episode. So I think the next one we're probably gonna be talking a little bit about money. So since people tend to like, you know what, hey, these trades are awesome, but what does that mean to me financially? How am I taking care of me and my family? We'll go ahead and make sure to go ahead and talk about that on the next one.
I like money.
Everybody does, or at least everybody that I'm aware of being a business owner. So loves that fact and what that's going to mean to them and what that means for their life. Make sure to tune in to the next Builder Hacks podcast.